Elaine Carter was the kind of mother every neighborhood admired, graceful, devoted, and endlessly present. Max and Lily, her two children, were the center of her world. But when Max was found wandering alone, bruised and terrified, and Lily vanished without a trace, the truth began to surface. Behind the perfect facade was a chilling secret that would shock an entire community. Was Elaine a grieving widow pushed too far, or a calculated predator hiding behind a mother's smile? Elaine Carter had always been admired in Westridge. From the outside, she seemed like the embodiment of grace and strength. Widowed 3 years earlier, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that drew respect. After her husband Greg's sudden death during a hiking trip, Elaine didn't crumble. Instead, she poured herself into parenting, raising her two children, Max and Lily, with unwavering attention. Her home was always immaculate. Her front lawn never had a single weed. Holiday decorations were always tasteful and timely. On Sundays, she attended church, dressed in pastel colors, with Lily in tow and Max just a few steps behind. Everyone knew her as the mother who never missed a school event and always baked extra for the bake sale. Online, her life appeared even more perfect. Her Instagram feed was filled with carefully composed photos, smiling breakfasts, matching pajamas on Christmas morning, arts and crafts afternoons. Every caption glowed with positivity words like grateful, blessed, and strong. Even after tragedy, Elaine radiated control and calm. But reality is never as filtered as a photo. In truth, cracks were forming, only visible to those who dared look closer. Most people didn't, because nobody wants to believe that something monstrous could hide behind such a flawless smile. It all began to change one Tuesday morning. Lily hadn't shown up at school for 3 days, and there was no call from home. The school secretary left voicemails, but none were returned. On the 4th day, Elaine finally called, explaining that Lily had the flu. Max was experiencing stress due to school pressure. It sounded reasonable enough. The school counselor made a note of it and decided to check in the following week. But something about the delay felt strange. Later that evening, a jogger found a young boy walking barefoot on the edge of Westridge Forest, miles from any nearby homes. The boy was dirty, bruised, and mute. He carried a stuffed rabbit and clutched it tightly, eyes darting toward every sound. Police were called, and it wasn't long before the boy was identified as Max Carter. When they asked where he came from, he didn't speak. Instead, he pointed toward the thick woods and began to cry. Detectives visited Elaine's house immediately. The front door was closed, and no one answered the bell. Through the windows, everything appeared normal, clean kitchen counters, a vase of fresh flowers, even soft music playing from a nearby speaker. But something was off. No movement inside. No sign of Lily. They obtained a warrant and entered the home. The upstairs bedrooms were pristine, almost unnaturally tidy. Lily's room had neatly stacked books and a perfectly made bed. Max's room had rows of toy soldiers lined with obsessive symmetry. Then they checked the basement. What they found changed everything. There, hidden behind a false wall, was a locked door with reinforced steel hinges. And when they broke it open, they discovered a soundproof chamber furnished like a child's bedroom, yet unnervingly sterile. On the wall were deep scratch marks, and beneath the bed lay a single pink shoe. The discovery of the hidden room sent shockwaves through the local police department. The room's walls were padded, the small bed covered in a faded cartoon bedspread. The only source of light was a dim ceiling bulb with a protective metal cage around it. The floor had old food wrappers, a cracked plastic toy, and a water-stained notebook with no cover. As investigators examined the space, they realized this wasn't a panic room or a child's display area. Was a place meant to keep someone inside, not safe, but contained. Forensics teams began to document every inch of the hidden basement. Scratches on the door suggested attempts to escape, and the faint smell of bleach confirmed recent cleaning. A fingerprint analysis revealed the prints belonged to Lily Carter. There were no signs of Elaine in the house. Her purse was gone, along with most of Lily's clothes and toiletries. The family car was missing too. Meanwhile, Max remained silent in the care of Child Protective Services. He refused food for the first 2 days and flinched at every sudden movement. When he finally spoke, it was only a whisper. She said not to talk. A child psychologist was brought in, and through careful sessions, more details began to emerge. Max drew pictures that told stories he couldn't say out loud, images of dark rooms, crying eyes, and a figure with long red fingers. Some showed Lily lying in bed with chains near her ankles. Others showed a woman's face split in half, one side smiling, the other side screaming. The media got wind of the situation quickly. What started as a story about a missing child turned into something far darker. Headlines speculated about abuse, cult-like behavior, and possible mental illness. The perfect mother the community had once celebrated was now a fugitive. Neighbors were in disbelief. Some refused to believe Elaine was capable of such horror. Others admitted they had noticed strange things. Max's frequent injuries explained away his clumsiness. Lily's absence from birthday parties, the way Elaine never let her children have sleepovers or playdates, things that once seemed like strict parenting now felt sinister in hindsight. The investigation expanded statewide. Surveillance footage from a local gas station captured Elaine 2 days prior, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. Pumping gas into the family's SUV, Lily was seen briefly in the passenger seat, looking down, her face partially obscured. Elaine used cash and left no electronic trail. Authorities believed she had planned her disappearance carefully, possibly for months. Elaine's online activity revealed encrypted messages sent through a parenting forum, later traced to burner accounts. The contents hinted at paranoia messages about protecting children from evil influences and saving them from corruption. There was mention of a cleansing and an unbreakable bond. Investigators feared Elaine's beliefs had become increasingly delusional, and that Lily was now in serious danger. As the search intensified, one thing became clear. This was no longer a case of a missing mom. This was a descent into something far more chilling, a mother who believed she was saving her children by isolating them from the world, even if it meant destroying them in the process. As the investigation widened, detectives began to reconstruct Elaine Carter's life piece by piece. Determined to understand how a seemingly perfect mother had turned into a possible criminal mastermind, public records revealed an unexpected twist. Elaine Carter had not always been Elaine Carter. She was born Elaine Marsh, in a different state under a cloud of tragedy and secrecy. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 10. She'd bounced through multiple foster homes throughout her adolescence. One particular report stood out. At age 15, Elaine had been placed in a temporary home with her younger half-sister, Melanie. Within a year, Melanie was dead in an accidental fall down the stairs, according to official documents. But whispers from that time suggested something more sinister. The foster family she lived with described Elaine as quiet, manipulative, and fiercely possessive of Melanie. The case was closed due to lack of evidence. This forgotten past gave investigators a new perspective. Elaine's obsession with control might have started long before she had children of her own. A pattern was beginning to emerge in intense attachment, isolation, and sudden disappearances of those closest to her. When she married Greg Carter, her background had been wiped clean, likely under a legal name change. Most people in Westridge had no idea about her previous identity. Even Greg's family only knew she had no close relatives and rarely spoke of her childhood. Greg's death was now back under the microscope. At the time, it was ruled an accident. He had fallen while hiking alone in a remote mountain trail. Elaine had told police they'd argued before he left that morning, but said she'd never saw him again. Coroner's report had noted unusual bruising on his arms and back. But since no one suspected foul play then, it hadn't been investigated further. Now experts re-examined the report and suggested that some of those marks could have been defensive wounds, as if he had been in a struggle before the fall.
Ow.
Detectives also combed through digital data. Elaine's internet history included research on disappearing without a trace, securing fake identities, and using untraceable cash apps. Her phone records showed a pattern of calls to numbers linked to survivalist groups and extremist parenting forums that pushed anti-government, anti-school ideologies. These were groups that believed society was poisoning children, that the only way to protect them was to remove them from it completely. Meanwhile, child psychologists continued working with Max, who now started speaking in fragments. He described rules they had to follow. No speaking unless spoken to. No crying, no looking outside. Punishments were severe. Lily was often kept in the black room. When she broke a rule, Elaine called it cleansing time. Max said their mother believed demons lived in their skin, and only silence could keep them safe. All signs pointed to a disturbing truth. Elaine's view of motherhood had warped into a dangerous obsession. Her desire to protect had transformed into a need to dominate and isolate. And with Lily still missing, the clock was ticking. Authorities feared that if Elaine believed the outside world was a threat, she might take drastic action to keep her daughter from ever being found again. A break in the case came 2 weeks after Elaine and Lily vanished. A park ranger near Granite Hills, Wyoming, over 900 miles from Westridge, reported a sighting of a woman and young girl camping near a restricted woodland area. The woman paid in cash, avoided eye contact, and appeared overly controlling with the child. When shown photographs, the ranger confirmed it was Elaine and Lily. Authorities rushed to the site, but by the time they arrived, the makeshift camp was already abandoned. Investigators scoured the area and found remnants of a small fire, empty cans of soup, and a discarded blanket that matched one missing from the Carter home. A few yards from the site, hidden behind dense brush, was a remote cabin that had been rented weeks before under a fake name. Inside, the place was stripped, nearly bare. The mattress was missing. The fridge was unplugged. On the walls, however, they discovered dozens of childlike drawings taped with care. Most were crude images of a woman towering over a small girl, her eyes glowing red, and her mouth twisted into a jagged line. Other drawings showed mazes, cages, and a girl crying in a locked room. One was particularly chilling, a sketch of a gravestone with the name Lily etched in shaky handwriting. Elaine had also left behind a half-burned journal, charred along the edges, but still legible in places. The entries were erratic and filled with paranoia. She wrote about cleansing Lily's thoughts, about society's lies, and how they tried to steal her children's purity. In one passage, she claimed that Max had been tainted by outside voices, and that silence was the only cure. Another entry read, "Lily is the last light. I must protect her, even if it means taking her into the silence." Further down the trail, officers discovered an abandoned vehicle registered under another alias. Inside the trunk were supplies: a shovel, duct tape, rope, canned food, and Lily's pink backpack. There was also a roll of children's artwork, carefully tied with twine. Each image showed Lily smaller and smaller, as though she were disappearing. Some had red X marks drawn through them. Authorities were now certain Elaine was unraveling. Her mental state was deteriorating, and her actions were becoming more erratic. What had begun as obsession had evolved into full-blown delusion. She didn't just want to hide Lily from the world, she believed she was saving her from it. The FBI joined the search, issuing bulletins across state lines, warning that Elaine might be armed and increasingly unstable. Meanwhile, Max, still in protective custody, began sleepwalking. He would often wake up screaming, calling for Lily. In his dreams, he said she was trapped under the ground, and that their mother was taking her to the other side. Investigators feared the worst, that Elaine was preparing to end both of their lives to protect them from a world she saw as poisoned. Every minute counted. Search teams were dispatched across the wilderness with dogs, helicopters, and drones. But Elaine knew how to vanish. She had planned this escape for longer than anyone realized. 13 days after the last sighting near Granite Hills, a hunter deep in the northern stretch of Bitterroot Forest noticed something unusual: a faint smoke rising from what should have been an abandoned ranger outpost. The structure was rarely visited, remote, and deteriorated. He approached carefully and saw fresh footprints around the perimeter. He reported it to authorities immediately. By the time a search team arrived, dusk had settled, casting long shadows through the pine trees. The team approached with caution. The outpost appeared empty, but a hidden trapdoor was found beneath a rotted rug inside. It led to a small underground bunker, likely built decades earlier for emergency shelter. The door creaked open, revealing a single flickering lantern illuminating a confined space. Curled in the corner, eyes wide and shivering, was Lily. She was pale, her clothes too thin for the cold, and her hair unevenly cut. Her arms were covered in scratches, and she had a faint bruising around her wrists. She didn't speak at first, just stared at the rescuers, as if unsure they were real. But once she was brought to the surface and wrapped in a blanket, her body finally relaxed. The team expected Elaine to be with her, but she was gone. Inside the bunker were disturbing items: a large knife, several notebooks filled with increasingly unstable writing, and a photo torn into two halves. One part showed Greg Carter with the children, The other Elaine alone, her half burned at the edges. The final pages of one notebook included sentences scribbled over and over: purity or silence. There is no third path. Lily was rushed to a hospital and examined. She was dehydrated, malnourished, but alive. Slowly, with the help of therapists, she began to reveal the truth. Elaine had told her they were going on a journey to become invisible. She taught Lily how to walk without leaving tracks, how to stay silent, and how to survive in isolation. Elaine had explained that people were infected and that even Max had been touched by the outside corruption. Lily believed they were hiding from something worse than monsters, something only her mother understood. She had been terrified, but obeyed, because disobedience meant punishment. In her words, Elaine had turned from mother to shadow. Despite exhaustive searches, Elaine Carter was never found. Blood was discovered near a stream close to the outpost, but DNA results were inconclusive. Some believed she had taken her own life. Others thought she escaped deeper into the wilderness, perhaps assuming a new identity yet again. A few conspiracy theorists speculated she had planned her own disappearance all along, staging everything to leave behind a haunting legacy. The case eventually went cold, but the scars remained. Lily and Max were placed in long-term care under the supervision of trauma specialists. The story of Elaine Carter faded from headlines, but remained etched into the memories of Westridge forever. She had once been the model mother, the symbol of strength. In the end, she became a riddle wrapped in fear. Was she a victim of her own damaged mind? Or something far more sinister? Mom or monster? The world may never truly know.